Welcome to the Two Doors podcast, where we open the doors to Australia's top minds in tech, talent, and transformation. Hosted by Alexander Gill, founder of Two Doors Recruitment, we cut through the noise with real conversations from leaders building the future of work. Subscribe to the show to hear and see more of these types of conversations. Let's get into it. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Two Doors podcast. And you are in for a treat today. I'm here with Brendan Donoghue. With over a career spanning 20 years, Brendan has been at the forefront of the human-centered design, HCD, and digital revolutions in corporate Australia. With an approach that could be best framed as relentless, Brendan has repeatedly found himself at the forefront of the adoption of innovation and design-led decision-making in conservative, risk-averse cultures. In the past 7 years, Brendan has transformed UniSuper's digital offering to be a market-leading, member-first experience, with a particular focus on how creative leaders can build influence in large, complex organizations. Brendan has been a driving force behind multiple high-impact improvements to the member and customer experiences at Optus, Telstra, NAB, and UniSuper. Brendan, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much for having me along. It's always a pleasure to talk about all things design and digital and user experience.
Oh yeah, I'm excited for today because you've seen quite a lot change in your time. And yeah, what have you been up to lately?
Most exciting thing we're doing at the moment is, funnily enough, in superannuation, you've got these two key periods where suddenly everyone gets interested in their super. And one of them is the end of financial year. That's probably not too surprising, but coming into the end of the year, people want to get their finances organized. The new financial year, they want to make changes. So I'm really focused on just making sure that that runs smoothly and I'm not interrupting people. Interestingly, the other key point is the point at which the year rolls over. So it's actually New Year's Day is one of our busiest periods as well. And that's always gives me heartburn because there's no one around, we're on holidays, and you want to make sure everything's working smoothly at that time as well.
It's true, isn't it? It's must be very busy at the moment, and outside of this, you're a great speaker. You speak on the circuit as well, and a great family man. So it's an honor to pick your brain today, and I really want to dig into one of the things we spoke about in the intro, which is how have you helped those creative leaders build influence in large, complex organizations? Because you and I had this conversation. I love your mindset towards this.
So years ago, I was obsessed with the idea of where were the chief design officers. So if you go back, John Colco writes, "Design thinking's time has arrived," publishes in the Harvard Business Review, and they felt like there was a revolution on the way. And so I was part of the time, a member of Telstra's design practice, an internal agency. We were writing papers for the board. There's a huge interest in what we can do. And it didn't happen. And it didn't happen not just at Telstra, but across all these different organizations. It didn't happen. And I was obsessed with what went wrong. And ultimately, I realized that as a design community, we made the terrible mistake of thinking that people who had spent decades of leading and thinking in a particular way were suddenly going to throw away all of that way of thinking and embrace design. And the trick was that we had not understood to speak to those leaders where they were, as opposed to getting them to understand what we did. So when I think about building influence, I tell leaders that as a creative leader, you've got to really do 4 things if you want to build influence, particularly in a corporate institution. Number 1, you've got to have craft excellence. So you've got to be the best at the thing that you do within the organization. Number 2, you have to be a good leader. There's no point in being able to tell a good story if people don't want to follow. So make sure you're focusing on the core leadership capabilities. Now, a lot of people think that's all they need to do, be good at the thing and be a good leader, but it only gets you so far. You then need really strong business acumen. Now, I worked at the National Australia Bank, and I used to ask the designers there, how does the business make money? And I'd often be met with these blank faces. And this would be from people who've just finished complaining, why doesn't the bank understand what I do? Well, if the bank doesn't understand what you do, how are you talking about what you do? So when all of my work, I don't talk about things like NPS scores, SUS scores. We've used SuperQ in the past, struggle scores. We use those internally to judge the performance of our platforms. But when I'm talking to the board of ELT, I am using cost to serve, acquisition, retention. They're the key measures that I'm always bringing everything back to. Why? Because they're the CEO scores. They're my boss's scores. So that's 3, business acumen. And the last one is the trickiest. I call it entrepreneurial behavior. And it's the idea that as a creative leader, you can do all of those other 3 things, but if you're not willing to go out on the edge, to network, to promote, to embrace in a little bit of risk, you'll only go so far, but you're not going to transform a business and build that really high degree of influence. Interestingly, that's the one that's the hardest to embrace as creative leaders, because so much of the education is about follow the process and you'll get to the outcome. I'm challenging that at its fundamental and saying, you've got to be okay to break the rules occasionally and say, I can do this. I don't know how it's going to happen, but I can guarantee that we'll lift sales. Let's go and execute our HCD process now and see where we land.
That's fascinating. That's a fantastic formula as well, because you're very right. I've seen the 1 and the 2, but then the 3 and the 4, it's a skill set. Like often people think, oh, they were born an entrepreneur. They've always done it. And it's like the biggest insult to someone who's grown that as a skill set. Like the school system teaches us, memorize, regurgitate. It doesn't think outside the box, figure it out mentality. And what would you suggest to somebody out there that's stuck in 1 and 2? Like how could they grow 3 and 4?
Oh, it's a fantastic question. I would say people are interested in not how the sausage is made, but how it tastes. So the one change you can implement as a designer or a design leader today is don't fall into the trap of telling the business what you do. Tell them what you've delivered. So don't explain, we're going to do a research phase and we'll do an ideation phase, create a prototype, we'll do contextual inquiries, testing. Just do that. Tell the powers that be, I need X amount of weeks, and at the end, I'll give you a fully clickable prototype that will showcase whatever it is, a better onboarding journey, a better service experience, an online form that will cut calls, or a more engaging digital experience.
Definitely. And that business acumen, it's key, isn't it? It's like you can learn all of this, but how do you execute and then grow and just figure it out? I'd love to touch on the revolutions as well, because I thoroughly enjoyed our last conversation where you're like, hey, I've seen all of these, and maybe we can talk about the latest revolution that we were just commenting before. But where do you see all of this going, Brent?
Absolutely. So the 3 revolutions, I happened to join IT as a person. I thought I wanted to be a lawyer. I went to law school. I didn't enjoy it. And then I started working as a sysadmin, and I was filling printers with paper and rebooting computers in the late 90s. And I rode that first wave of the internet revolution. I then rode the subsequent wave of human-centered design revolution, where we're coming into businesses, we're going to change them. And I'm now right in the thick of the 3rd revolution that I've been a part of. There have been others, but the AI revolution. One of the things I find interesting is how well they both map to the Gartner hype cycle. And that idea of the promise is everything and it's going to do absolutely everything. And then we fall off the edge of the cliff and we fall down into the kind of pit of despair. Actually, it's not anything like we thought it was at all. And then we climb out the other side. Actually, it's made quite a difference. I just need to use it in the right way. So for me, that 3rd revolution is that bit of AI at the moment. And, I had an opportunity to chat to Gartner recently, and they were telling me that what they were seeing across the industry was 93% of all chatbot-enabled changes were actually failing to meet the targets the businesses had put on them. Only 7% are hitting the mark. And I find that fascinating, because that's a really good example of it. It looks like businesses are choosing a solution and then trying to work out the problem to apply it to. AI is incredible for me when you look at what's the business problem you want to solve, and then how can you use AI or large language models, generative content to help solve that problem.
It should almost be called the large language model revolution, shouldn't it? It's like, that's where it is. And it's a productivity tool. It's not necessarily needed that we need to rely on it, but I feel it's just in this hype that everyone wants to talk about it. And it's fascinating to hear those statistics as well. And in terms of the next stage, where do you see this going? So we're in the thick of the AI revolution, aren't we? But where do you see this all going?
That's such a good question. I was speaking recently to CX leaders in Melbourne, we were talking about the challenges of AI. And what's interesting is so many of the community think about the challenge of AI is that AI is going to come and take your job. Now, I don't know that I believe that. I had a great line about a year ago. You won't lose your job to AI, but you might lose it to someone who knows how to use AI better than you.
It's huge.
And I love that because I think that's quite telling. If you are using this as a tool, then you'll stay ahead and you'll be able to grow. And sometimes I think maybe we're a bit like accountants and the calculators just come out. We've got a tool that can move a lot faster. How do we embrace it, use the tool? It will help us. It shouldn't replace us. So if I think about that, that's where a lot of people's head is at the moment. The thing I'm thinking of as well is one of the dangers with AI at the moment is that it is sucking up all the attention and the funding and the focus that used to be spread across multiple other improvements in corporate Australia. So if you're having a lot of attention and focus and funding going into this one bucket, and we've just talked about 93% of those aren't working, well, hang on a second, we've got a problem. How do we make sure that we're still moving the needle forward for those things that improve user experience, create those better connections, and bring to life the great designs we've got? That's where I actually think it's incumbent on us as creative leaders to really build that level of influence and say, hey, we've got a great concept. Let's go and build this, because that helps ensure we're still moving that forward whilst the business is also rightfully continuing to focus on where it can improve around AI.
Yeah. And I love how you talk about the customer, the users often, like you always put that first, and digging into what you said there as well. What is a creative leader?
Oh, do you know what's funny? When I first came up with this idea of a creative leader, it was a human-centered designer leader, right? So it was a leader who worked in design. That's nonsense. Creative leaders are anyone who actually bring different ways of thinking to a business. So I started my career within tech, moved into human-centered design, human-centered design leader, and now I run that HCD as well as digital practice. Digital, analytics, all of these people are creatives because they're thinking of innovative ways in which to change the business that they're working within. So part of the reason I love the term a creative leader is it doesn't define it to a single function. It's really, if you want to think differently and you want to be creative and not just move things from one box to another, here's a toolkit and approach to actually help you to do that.
I love that because I see creativity as intelligence having fun.
Oh.
And it's often you're thinking outside the box, but respecting the box at the same time and then transition over.
I love that. We'd been challenged years ago. What was the vision statement for your life? And it's a tough question, right? What's the whole purpose that you're alive? And the thing I landed on was I want to leave the world better than when I arrived. And so that might be in a tiny, tiny little sliver. My job at the moment, I love it. I work in superannuation, which makes people or enables people to be better off in retirement, but along the way gives them an opportunity to invest in things that align with their values. So there's an altruistic benefit you can get along the way. So I get to feel fantastic I'm having this positive impact, but it really drove the decisions I made around career and what I wanted to do day to day because I wanted to make sure I was living that value. I think if you're doing that all the way along your career, it enables you to focus, it enables you to grow, it enables you to get through the hard times because you feel like you're making an impact.
And impact is why we get up in the morning, isn't it? It's that fulfillment that you have to have, reward. And I agree, the superannuation system is fantastic. As someone who grew up in London, we've got this pension system and it's just borrowing from our future self. People don't know what's going on, whereas we're investing, we're doing meaningful work. And I mean, let's talk leadership now, Brendan, because I think you're you're a great communicator, but you didn't wake up like this, did you? Like, firstly, what do you think great leadership looks like? And secondly, like, how can you grow your leadership skills?
Can I come back to the point about communication? Because I think it's such a core part of being a good leader. I was in year 7 and I remember my teacher pulling me aside and saying, look, I know that you're quite interested in public speaking, but you're terrible at it. I'd stop and I'd really focus on something else.
Wow.
For me, I couldn't have heard a better message because I was so driven then to be better that I wanted to prove this person wrong, but that assessment was probably quite fair, that I wasn't particularly good and I wasn't trying and I wasn't working on it. So over my career, I've really focused on how do I get better and better as a communicator, because when pressure is on, when you need to motivate people, the ability to stand in front of, be it a board or be it your own team, and explain clearly under pressure where you want to be going, that does half the job for you because everyone's now on the same page. So from a leadership standpoint, over the past 20 years almost, I've been in these big organizations and I've been driving change. The thing that I think that has set me apart or enabled me to enjoy the level of success that I've had is the ability to embrace risk. And it's the ability to say, I'm okay being different within this organization, and I'm okay pushing up against the edge, because at the end of the day, I want to actually have an impact, drive a change. I don't just want to get through the day and get to the end and not have upset or trodden on anyone's toes. I joined a job once and I started meeting with all the executives. And one executive brings me into his office and says, now, what have you got on your plate? I said, oh, here's the things I'm looking at. And he said, look, that's not nearly good enough. I want you in the rest of the business. I want you disrupting. That's what you are. You're a CX leader. Get in and disrupt. And the next month I came in and he said, now, what is this I hear about you disrupting my team? And I said, but you told me to. And he said, not my team, everyone else. So that's the bit of be comfortable getting in and poking the bear a little bit and seeing how you can do things differently. Because when you couple that with the ability to communicate and the ability to hire the right people, half the battle is won, because the people in your team will then see that you are walking the walk and not just talking the talk, that you're willing to put yourself at risk. They'll follow you then into the next challenge so that they see you're in front. They're going to be right behind you and affecting that change with you.
Yeah. And leadership is example. And that's what I love. And we spoke last time about your hiring philosophy, because I think leadership is not only responsibility and example, but it's also empowering the next generation. Like, leaders are the biggest failures that are in the room, but no one realizes that, because we failed more times than anybody else. But it's the ability to get up one more time. And, that old Rocky Balboa, hit down 7, get up 8 kind of mentality. But what's your hiring philosophy?
Well, we've got a couple of philosophies and an approach around hiring, which was really interesting. So I came to UniSuper and I had this huge blind spot that I didn't know about. I'd worked at Telstra, Optus, the National Australia Bank, and I'd put out an ad and I'd get 100 people apply and we would pick the best person. And that was easy, but I thought it was the same for everyone. I didn't realize the power that those brands carried in the ads that were out in the market. So I now arrive at UniSuper. UniSuper at the time was a closed fund. We didn't do any marketing externally, and so people didn't know who we were. And I kept losing fantastic candidates at the final hurdle. So I said, right, we've got to change completely what we're doing here. And what we did was we actually implemented a second interview, where the first interview might be a chat with me, might be a chat with the hiring manager, and it's a quick kick the tires on, can you do the thing that you're saying you can do? And we can assess, great, you can move on. The second interview was randomly selected members of the team who were instructed to answer every single question, answered brutally honestly. And what we did was, it was an opportunity for the candidate to meet the team and ask whatever they wanted. Because the thing that I worked out that I had, which was a competitive advantage over all the other places in the market, was culture. We have a great culture here. And I was like, how do I use that? So these second interviews became an opportunity. A candidate would come in, they might ask, is Brendan annoying? What's the leadership style here like? What are the hours you're working? What's the type of work I'll be doing? I've read this in the job ad. Is that really what you do, or do you actually end up doing something else? And because of this complete honesty, candidates would come out of that second interview and would then be banging on the door and saying, this is the place I want to work. How do I get a job here? And it flipped the script completely then on the type of people we were seeing coming through, the types of conversations we were having. But really importantly and unexpectedly, the way in which they then landed in the team and started their work, because it was almost like because they'd seen the type of business we were. Day one, there wasn't this big adjustment. They already knew what they were getting into and would hit the ground running a lot faster.
It's brilliant, isn't it? So you're very transparent with who you are and your warts and all, and you're just showing, okay, this is who we are as a culture.
Absolutely. And the thing about that is we're not perfect. We make mistakes. We've got areas that we can improve. Having that honesty and that open communication, it helps you find what are the spots you can improve on. I'll never forget the moment 15 years ago. A friend of mine I'm working with sent me an email one day out of the blue, just said, in your reflection, how could I be a better leader? And I was blown away by, he's a peer of mine. He's someone who I think is fantastic at what he does, but asking, hey, just honestly tell me where I could improve. And I've really taken that throughout my career then and really lean into. I do skip level meetings, I do catch-ups with the team, and it's always one of the questions I ask, which is, how can I be better playing my role so that you can then do more?
That's humility. Because if your ego is too big, you don't want to know, right? You know everything. You're not open to that feedback. It's brilliant to hear, because I feel that you'll always connect with the people that it's your vibe, your tribe, that mentality. It's like you and I can talk about high performance and relentlessness and all of this, but not everyone can. Some people are they're happy being C players or whatnot, and you have to incorporate everybody in a team. But like you attract your own energy, because especially in recruitment, like I would never try and convince somebody or like push someone through, because it never works out in the end. You want your own people. And I love it. I looking at the time as well, but I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. Well, bringing this into land then. So I'd love to get any wisdom from you, anything you would love to share, or maybe talk the difference between digital and tech. But yeah, anything you would love to share.
Can I share with anyone who might be listening? We were chatting before this call on what's the one word that I would use to describe a successful creative leader. So we've talked about, what's that one skill you need? We did this whilst I was at NAB, and initially we'd talked a lot about, was it empathy? Was empathy the one thing that made you better? And as time went on, I came to realize empathy is the ticket to the ball game. Empathy that's 101. If you don't have empathy, it's going to be really hard for you to be a creative or a creative leader. Instead, I've really landed on this idea of relentlessness, that it is really, really hard to transform corporate institutions. It's particularly hard to transform conservative corporate institutions. And across Australia, the big businesses are conservative corporate institutions. We do have some startup, but the Atlassians, etc., Canvas, but largely it's the banks, it's finance institutions, it's insurers. It's really hard to change their culture. So if you want to affect that change in culture and help them become more human-centered and help them really deliver these fantastic outcomes, you have to actually apply a level of relentlessness to the pursuit of your craft. And it means pushing through all the difficulties. It means focusing on the outcome. It's, to your Rocky Balboa example, getting knocked down 4 times and getting up the 5th, because that's the thing that our industry requires us to be doing as leaders. That if we don't champion design, who else in our business is going to? No one else is going to do it for us. And I think that was the mistake we made last time, was we waited for C-suite or board to say, oh, I heard about this thing from IDEO called design. I want that in the business. Let's set it up. No, we have to be the beachhead back into the business saying design can change your business from within. Here's the opportunity. Let's do this together. So I think that the piece I want to leave you with is, don't discount the value of dedication and focus on your craft. Just pushing through, because the benefits will come.
That's huge wisdom. Thank you very much. It's been an absolute honor and privilege. So thank you for coming on the podcast, Brendan.
My absolute pleasure. Thank you.
If you've liked this episode, please like and subscribe. It helps the growth of the channel so we can keep interviewing some of the best minds that there are here. Thank you very much.